Hello, bonsoir, and welcome to the Get French Football News Show. I'm your host, Nathan Staples, and joining me this week is just Eric Devine. It's a two-man show this evening. Liga always throws its fair share of curveballs, and after the European trip for all the teams in midweek, could they repeat their business when it comes to league action? Well, all of this and more after the latest headlines. A full slate of Liga action started in earnest Friday evening as Paris Saint-Germain travelled to Caen, coming away with a decisive 6-0 win led by Edinson Cavani's 4 goals. Saturday's early match had the league's best defence travelling to Monaco, who responded to PSG's win with one of their own, a late brace from Thomas Lemar, leading to a 3-0 victory. In the multiplex, goals were at more of a premium during these evening fixtures, with just 8 across the 5 matches. Angers continued their turnaround by defeating Bordeaux away 1-0. Carl El Toko Ekambi on the score sheet for the second match running. Guingamp had gone down to 10 men away to Toulouse, but nevertheless managed to take the lead through a Jimmy Briand penalty before the host responded with a pair of goals from Martin Braithwaite and Jimmy Dumas to win 2-1. At Nancy, Nantes had taken the lead through new signing of their own, Marius Stebinski, but Loic Puyol's free kick ended up being the equaliser in a 1-1 draw. Elsewhere, Dijon and Metz played to a scoreless draw, while Lorient finally got off the mark at home to Lille, courtesy of a Benjamin Mukanjo penalty. Sunday's early match saw Montpellier generally have all the better of Nice, but Younes Belander's late strike against his former club earned Les Aiglons a draw ahead of their derby with Monaco on Wednesday. The early evening match saw a bit of drama as Saint-Etienne won 1-0. Despite Robert Beric's early penalty miss, the substitute Roman Amouma hit the winner from the spot in injury time. The final match of the weekend was the Olympico, and even without the travelling fans from Lyon, those at the Velodrome showed they were ready for plenty of action, smashing the windows of Lyon's bus. The match, however, lacked the drama of the build-up as it ended in a scoreless draw. In Ligue 2, Brest won at home to Auxerre to go top, but second-placed Amiens have a game in hand, their fixture away to Gazlak Ajaccio having been postponed this weekend. And that's all for the news, but remember, to keep up to date with everything to do with French football, head on over to our website at www.getfootballnewsfrance.com and follow us on Twitter at GFFN. We start with Friday's game where Paris Saint-Germain and Edinson Cavani bounced back from midweek heartbreak to batter Caen 6-0. The Uruguayan grabbed 4 in a starring role, Eric. Is he back to his best, or is this at least a hint that he could be coming back to the form we expect from him?
I think it's a mixture of both. I mean, first of all, we have to take Caen with a grain of salt. The way that they try and play on the counter means that they're frequently going to be caught out in defense. The likes of Damien De Silva and Sian Youssef do get forward on occasion with the ball at their feet. So Monaco are always going to have, Caen are always going to have their defense stretched, especially with that front three of Lucas, Di Maria, and Cavani really stretching play well. Rabiot had a fantastic game as well. But I think, yes, I think that I've always been someone that's defended Cavani, but going back to his time as a striker during Ibrahimovic's a couple of injury layoffs during the most recent seasons, he had been a decent scorer. But then once Emery came in, I'll admit my mind changed. Paris Saint-Germain, I know friendlies don't count for much, but Cavani looked off the pace there. Again, coming back from Copa America, there's a bit of a caveat, but then seeing how the team performed in that Trophée des Champions match and to start the season, it didn't look like Cavani had a role in this team. He was still snatching his chances. He scored against Monaco, but he didn't look to have that sort of fluidity. But now, we see in this match, and Lee wrote a nice piece on the site about this that I urge everybody to check out, Lee Davey. I think that there is something to be said for this. I mean, this is the thing. Even though he's played with Di Maria and Lucas for a little while now, it's been on the left, and it's not been they haven't had time to establish a chemistry. So I think there may be something to him being able to rehabilitate his reputation. Now, let's be frank. At this point, Emery's sort of forced to play him as a striker, given the form of Hesse and Ben Arfa, who have also played up top in that role under Emery. So he's left with few options, let's be honest. I mean, Jean-Kevin Augustin is there as well, and I think hopefully he gets a chance midweek. But the reality is Cavani is the only option. But that being said, I think that, now that perhaps he's had a little bit more time to play as a central striker, he showed some really nice moments of interplay with both Lucas and Di Maria at the weekend, on Friday, that is. And Maxwell as well, I think, did really well to get forward. And I think there might be something to be said. Again, they're playing Dijon midweek, and they're playing Toulouse on Friday. Let's see them tested against a stronger opponent. But that being said, I think there are encouraging signs there, and just for confidence. I mean, we know that Cavani is a confidence player, and being able to score 4 goals like this, I think he hasn't done this in a match since he left Napoli. I'm pretty sure. So just to have him have a boost in confidence and to continue to gain that rapport with Di Maria and Lucas, I think will do well for him. But I think the jury's still out as to whether he's, at his absolute best, or at least a level approaching that what we saw from Ibrahimovic last season.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Eric. I think the 4 goals that he scored in this game really should, if anything, boost the confidence that he probably lost in that Arsenal game where he missed so many chances and was so criticised for not putting Paris Saint-Germain out of sight before the English side had a chance to really pull themselves back into the game. But he did. The difference between this and the other games was the movement has not been really an issue. He's been getting into the right places and getting onto the end of things. He's just not been finishing things. He's been snatching at chances. As you've mentioned, he struggled, but he looked more cultured. He took his time. The first goal really settled him. The penalty helped as well. And then against a Caen team that did invite pressure on, he really succeeded in that role and scored some good goals. But I also want to mention you mentioned him very briefly in those list of attackers, and that's the substitute who did come on in this game, Jean-Kevin Augustin, who did play a role sort of playing as a central striker and grabbed a goal with 10 minutes to go. We've already mentioned that Hesse's not particularly worked in that area, and Hatem Ben Arfa is maybe falling out of favour a little bit. Is it a really good chance for him to step up and become that second striker behind Cavani when they need it?
Oh, I think absolutely. I think that given the fixture congestion at PSG are starting, I might even look to see him start both matches, midweek and on Friday against Toulouse. Given that PSG are going to have to continue with their Champions League team, and 3 points will become a little bit more of an imperative now that they've moved past Arsenal. I mean, Arsenal are like PSG going to probably be looking to get maximum points off the other 2 teams in their groups. Basel and Ludogorets, I believe, are the other 2, and it's pretty imperative that Cavani be fit and fighting for that. So I'd look for Augustin to start both of the next 2 matches, and hopefully he can, given the fixture congestion that PSG will face, become that second striker. I think that he's shown with his international play this summer and with what he showed as well in the friendlies in the United States that he certainly has that in his locker. And I think that, PSG have so many options to score goals, and they're never going to be outclassed domestically. So, he deserves to have some opportunities. I think that, Monaco are leading the table now, but Monaco are wonderful to watch, but they have a pretty short squad, and I don't think that come the end of the season that they're gonna be on the top of the table. So, give Augustin those chances in the league, give Augustin those chances in the cup. Let him make that quote unquote backup striker role his own, because that will allow Emery to keep Cavani fresh for these big matches. I mean, let's remember that in addition to fixture congestion, Cavani still has to make at least 3 more trips this season to South America for a World Cup qualifying with Uruguay. So that's consideration as well. They're going to need to have someone who is not flying all around the world and still trying to play in every match. So a second striker is absolutely imperative for PSG to have any sort of success this season. And I think that Augustin, based not only on his goal, but what he's shown for the under 19 French team, deserves to have every opportunity to take that role.
Absolutely, and I even mentioned it on Thursday's show that they were probably looking towards January for another striker, and if he can fill that role, it's a great bonus for them. But I do want to mention the change of formation that Emre displayed a little bit in this game. He's predominantly used that 4-2-3-1 so far this season, but he changed it slightly to more of a 4-3-3 with Blaise Matuidi, Rabiot, and Krychowiak starting, and then with Lucas and Angel Di Maria more in those out wide positions again. And it created some really good moments, and I thought it was much more solid. Con really didn't put anything together, although they're not the most successful of sides. They were struggling to really break on Paris Saint-Germain, and like other teams have this season so far. I mean, Saint-Etienne's goal essentially comes from a break in the draw last weekend, and having that formation just seems more balanced. Even if you do bring Javier Pastore in for Matuidi as another centre midfielder, I still think having that balance of a 4-3-3 works better in this team. And we've mentioned it before, Eric, really, about his formations so far. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to respectfully disagree, Nathan. I think that the 4-2-3-1 with Pastore at his best in that central role, I do think provides more solidity. I think that if you have Krychowiak and Rabiot sitting, that allows Rabiot to go and join the attack, or Matuidi could play that role to be an extra attacker. And it also, given the ability of the two fullbacks, whether it's Kurzawa and Aurier or Mounier and Maxwell, you have a little bit more protection in the mobility of Krychowiak and Rabiot or Matuidi to really allow the front three to do what they want to do. I think that it gets the best out of Pastore, and I think, as fantastic as Di Maria can be, especially how he started during the earlier parts of last season, I think that he's still not, for me. I think he's someone who, as talented as he is not going to get this done on work ethic. He doesn't have the natural talent that a Pastore does to give those genuine moments of class that we've seen in a team that wants to be a Champions League contender. I think Pastore has to be privileged here, and being played in a 4-2-3-1. I mean, he was given the number 10 by Emery, and that's a pretty big statement of intent on the manager's part to say, listen, you are the player who's going to lead this team forward.
It's an interesting point, and I counter that with another one of, I would say, and it was proven in the last couple of games, even though they didn't pick up wins, that crucially Marco Verratti is the most important player in this team, and in a 4-3-3 with possibly him, Krychowiak and Rabiot maybe, I think that's probably at the moment, at least on form, Paris Saint-Germain's best midfield. I know I would agree with you that if Javier Pastore is in full form, I would start Verratti and Krychowiak behind him. But in current form, I think that 4-3-3 offers them it still offers the front three those freedoms. I think Rabiot's got the energy and the willingness at the moment to push forward and back as a box to box. Verratti does sit a little deeper, playing as that deep lying playmaker, and it still allows those front three the freedom. But we'll agree to disagree a little bit on the formation. But it also shows the flexibility that they have this season compared to previous seasons, because we were questioning their midfield last season of not being flexible enough and not having the right players to change in those areas, and that's where they struggled. So is that a good thing from Emery to have so many different options and in attacking areas as well? It's a blessing that really was missing from Blanc, surely, wasn't it?
I think so. I think we can point to the injuries to the likes of Verratti and Matuidi down the stretch last season as being something related to Blanc's overuse of these players. I think that Emery has shown a willingness to rotate, and I think that especially as Verratti and Matuidi return to full fitness after the summer exertions, you're going to have Krychowiak as well. I mean, having played in the Euros as well, there's going to be a good amount of balance and flexibility there. Again, I can agree with what you're saying with the 4-3-3. I think it makes sense, but I think at the very top level, in Champions League knockout rounds, I do think the 4-2-3-1 makes a little bit more sense, given how effective it was for Sevilla under Emery. And I think this is with better players even. But again, I think that this team now you look at the team that played on Friday against Caen. That's a fine starting lineup. But then we look at the bench. Mata, Augustin, Pastore, Thiago Silva, and Verratti were all on the bench. And that's not even to mention Aurier and Kurzawa. Now this team really has the depth to contend on all four fronts. And that's what they were lacking last season, because whether it was Matuidi, whether it was Verratti, whether it was even Ibrahimovic to some points, these players got tired, they got overused, and I think that was a lot of PSG's undoing. I think that they certainly had the talent when fully fit, and to take on anybody. But their loss to Manchester City, I think, was down to Blanc's tactics to some extent, but also those tactics were a matter of necessity in that instance due to the short squad that he had at the time due to the injury crisis.
Yeah, and it's great for Paris Saint-Germain to get back on the horse, especially in Ligue 1 terms with that 6-0 win. But I do want to mention Caen briefly. They've won 2 and lost 3, but a heavy defeat to Paris Saint-Germain again, and they didn't really put any kind of fight, really. Do you worry about them still this season, or do you think that some of the results so far have shown that there is a bit of life in them this campaign?
Well, I mean, yes and no. I feel like they've struggled a little bit to refresh this team, and that's the issue. I mean, Hervé Bazile was fantastic a few years ago. Hasn't really shown much form either this season or last. The players that they brought in, the likes of Vincent Bessa and Ronnie Rodelin, have done fairly well. But again, they're not spring chickens themselves. We do have the youngster Caramo, who's been playing quite a bit on the wing. There's also Jean-Victor Makengo, who's a more central player who I think is really fantastic, but hasn't been given much of a chance. So I think that's a bit of the problem, that Garand has these players, but who are nominally talented, but there's no live wire, there's no spark, and without that, I mean, Julien Ferre is a fantastic player. I love his creative impetus, but there's a predictability and a sort of almost a weariness to the way that Caen can play at times, and for all the talent they have, there's not that. Okay, we see this from Augustin. We see this from Marcus Coco at Guingamp. We see this from Thomas Lemar at Monaco. I mean, again, I'm trying to imply that Caen should have a player that's of that ilk, but so just to give more of these young players a chance. I mean, Caen have a pretty strong academy. We talk about Rafael Guerrero, I think, making that big money move to Dortmund and playing fantastically well at a totally new position for Dortmund at the weekend. And there is a history at this team of bringing these younger players through, but N'Golo Kante as well. But where are the players that are being given a chance now? I mean, Nicolas Sub, Steve Malbranc. It's just I want to see a freshness and energy, something that'll give this team a little bit more spark. I know the loss of Eddie Delors is a big deal, but Santini, I think, has a lot of the same qualities and should be able to be enough of a replacement for Caen to avoid relegation. But I'd like to see them be just a little bit more attractive going forward.
Yeah, and I think you've already mentioned one there, Yann Caramo. I've been impressed with him so far this season, in his endeavour at least, if anything. And they just need more players like that will just... Like you mentioned, the problem they had at the weekend was that any attacks were being broken up before they ever made it anywhere near anyone like Rodelin or Caramo or Santini. So they never really got into any final third of the pitch. And it's okay against Paris Saint-Germain, you sort of get a free swing, I would have really in Ligue 1 against them. But you worry against that. Like the game in midweek might be a big game against Angers. If they can get a result there, that will be big. But yeah, I'm I'm with you in this camp. They look a little bit old and weary in that middle of the park, and like they need that little spark, that little X factor to really punch up this season. But they 2 wins in the bag at least will give them some breathing room heading into the next fixtures. But we move on to the table toppers currently, who are rolling on from their great win at Wembley. Monaco now lead Ligue 1 by 2 points after a strong 3-0 win against Rennes. Eric, are they true title contenders this season?
I think absolutely. I said this in the previous show. I thought that given the lack of certainty given over Nabil Fekir and the lack of certainty over Alexandre Lacazette's situation vis-a-vis the transfer market, I thought that Lyon were going to be fine, but they wouldn't be second place. I thought it'd be Monaco, and I think that they've really borne that out. I think that they have fantastic depth. They have fantastic positional versatility. The likes of a Moutinho, a Silva, Adama Traore, Djibril Sidibe, Fabinho, all these players that can play in multiple positions. And even though they don't have a very deep squad, a couple key injuries I think could really set them off. We should be careful about that. But I think that top to bottom, particularly as Falcao seems to be rounding back into form after returning from his most recent injury, there's a lot to really appreciate in this squad. The young right back, Almami Toure, had a fantastic match at the weekend against Rennes as well. So, yeah, if they can stay fit, I think absolutely they can continue this form. Again, fixture congestion is going to be an issue. Maybe it wouldn't be the worst idea for them to dog it a little bit in either the Coupe de la Ligue or the Coupe de France. It gives some of these other young players more of a chance, maybe the likes of a Bashilia or the young striker Contingent.
Yeah.
So again, I think that as Monaco can sort of balance their demands, they've got a great look at the Champions League. Benjamin Mendy is still yet to come back, but they do have more options in terms of these younger players. If they can find that balance, I think absolutely they can maintain this. I do think that Nabil Dirar, we missed this last week, but he's been ruled out for about 6 weeks after coming off against Monaco, and that's a serious concern for me. I think his work rate and his defensive effort is really important to providing cover for the right back position. He's another one I think is going to be important, but again, yeah. Should they stay fit? There's no reason for this run not to continue.
Yeah, it's really disappointing to see him go off after he's had a great start to the season. But you've already mentioned the depth, and just looking at the squad at the moment on the Ligue 1 website, looking at it, there's so many players that have seen at least a little bit of action this season. They're in their squad list. There's not a single striker that's not had at least a match under his belt, or at least a half an hour. There's no midfielders that haven't seen the field, and there's literally 2 defenders in Pierre Daniel Nguida Ndifon and Mehdi Benedine that haven't seen the field. And that shows you exactly the trust that not only the manager Leonardo Jardim has in these players, but also the incredible depth. And you mentioned the amount of people that have those extra positions they can play in, like Fabinho can play essentially across the back 4 or in the midfield if you needed to. Djibril Sidibe could play in both wing-back positions and probably on the wing if you really needed it, because you could use Almami Toure, who played really well at the weekend, on one of the full-back positions, and you can switch Mendy onto a different full-back position. They have so many different options, but I do want to mention, you mentioned that if one injury or a couple of injuries were to happen, it might derail them. I'm going to point out someone that most people will probably point to it, and that's Bernardo Silva. Is he still the absolute key in this team and the one that really glues everything together?
No, it's Fabinho.
Go ahead.
Absolutely. I think that the energy and work rate that Fabinho has put in, when he was first being deployed in defensive midfield, I want to say it was the end. I'm not sure if it was the end of 2015 or 14-15 season or last season. He started being played alongside Jeremy Toulalan. He had a fantastic teacher in Toulalan to play alongside in that 4-2-3-1, and I think that he's really grown in stature and grown in maturity and grown in importance. I think that what we want to see from this central area, from this box-to-box midfielder, is a level of judiciousness, a level of consideration with when to make a run, when to make a tackle. And we're seeing this time and time again from Fabinho, that his ability to figure out how he wants to use his talents, thinking about that goal against Lille, when to run forward, when to make a tackle, when to make a pass. I think that's going to be, the absolute most important thing. Monaco's dominance in midfield is what allows these other players, whether it's a Lamar, a Silva, a Moutinho, to do their work, and it also is what allows those attacking fullbacks, Mendy when fit, CDB, to get forward, knowing that you have the mobile likes of Fabinho and Bakayoko alongside him to do that work. And in his career, Fabinho has had a solid discipline, and he's got a good knack for a pass, and that central part of his game, that linking play from the defense to the attack is continuing to develop in a really impressive way. And I think that as that continues to go, he turns 23 next month. I made a remark on Twitter that I think Fabinho could be Monaco's record outgoing signing within a couple of years. And of course, I got some backlash saying, "Oh, he's going to be sold for more than Martial." Well, I mean, if the right team wants him, I think he's really has potential to be on that level, to be one of the world's best all-around midfielders. He's not going to be as inventive going forward as, say, a Paul Pogba or a Miralem Pjanic or Toni Kroos, players like that. But at the same time, he has just that little bit of solidity. And if you had him, in a team in the very top echelon, I think he'd fit right in, frankly, at this point. We see maybe Real Madrid needing a player other than Casemiro to be an orthodox defensive midfielder. Well, I think Fabinho could fit that bill pretty well. So to me, I think he's been the ever present. He's played 70 matches over the last 2 seasons. He's been there for Monaco, throughout a raft of injury woes last season. So many players missed time last season. I think that was a lot of their undoing last season. But now, they've got a smaller squad. They maybe have made some mistakes, I think, in some of the players they sold. Martial Tisserand in particular, I don't really get that given the fee and what central defenders go for. But I think Fabinho, for me, is the most important player.
Yeah, and I'm going to make a very brief comparison for Fabinho, and cut me off if you disagree, but he reminds me a little bit in that midfield area, because he's a great right back as well. Let's not forget that. He can really play there if someone wants him. But he reminds me a little bit of N'Golo Kante when he was at Leicester, that he can be literally everywhere on a pitch when you need him. And he's not too bad going forward. He can put a pass. He's got great timing in the box. I think he's a little bit like that. If you were to compare, if you don't watch him on a week-to-week basis and you needed a quick comparison, very quickly, Eric, would you maybe agree with that, or am I barking up the wrong tree here?
I think there's something to be said for that. I think that there's a little bit that, whereas Kante, for me, I think is a player who relies more on energy and industry. I think there's a little bit more a culture to the way Fabinho plays his game. I mean, let's face it, he's also Monaco's penalty taker on a team with the likes of João Moutinho, Falcao, Lamar, Silva, players who are recognized for their attacking talents. This guy, young guy at 22, is the one who's taking their penalties. So I know penalty taker is not necessarily an indication of a player's offensive gifts, but it does speak to some ability, the understanding that he has on the ball. I mean, we think about other excellent penalty takers, like perhaps a Leighton Baines, someone who rarely misses penalties. That there's an understanding and a judiciousness on that player's part, and a level of class and culture and craft. I think that the Kante comparison, well, Fabinho can play that role. I think there's more to his game, and I think that we see. For example, talking about the fee, the money that Leicester recouped from Chelsea in that move. I think Fabinho, give him another 2 or 3 years, or put him at a level higher than Ligue 1. I think he's got every chance to do that. We look at that match from last midweek, and gosh, Spurs are one of, the best high intensity teams in England. I know Pochettino probably made a mistake by playing Ali in central midfield rather than Sissoko or Dembele at the start. But seeing Monaco boss that midfield against, one of the supposed best central pairings in England, I think that says it all right there, that he's ready to take on the world. Now, personally, I hope it's at Monaco, and I hope that they do well in the Champions League and do well in the league. But let's face it, this guy is destined for bigger things.
And I do want to big up his excellent midfield partner and Timu Bakayoko, who's been fabulous this season as well. He's really come on, and it's such a shame that he missed so much time with injuries and not quite getting into the squad. And he's really, really coming on strong. He reminds me a little bit of he's got a little bit of everything with him. He's really good in the tackle. His positioning's really solid. And his little runs from midfield are again reminiscent of Yaya Toure for me. The power within them, the very subtle skill that he can do with his feet to drift past players with ease. He almost seems like he doesn't shift out of second gear when he starts running, but no one can touch him. It's so strange when you watch it, and it's so reminiscent of the Ivorian. And I think again he's another one. If they keep those two together this season, my word, they're a really good partnership, and they do allow those attacking players that Monaco have got in fabulous areas. Bernardo Silva is such a wonderful footballer, and João Moutinho has really bounced back from a season and a half that was not necessarily his best, but he's really starting to find that role in this team again. And we all know the qualities of Thomas Lemar. It's great to see him back again and really scoring two really good goals against a Rennes side that we were mentioning, Eric, in the preview show. They should be they've got the strongest defence in Ligue 1, but we did think that this would be clearly their toughest test so far. They held out for quite a bit of this game, but did the class really show at the end? And is there at least hope for Rennes against other teams in this division that their defence can hold out a little bit stronger?
Well, I mean, if it's down to the I don't want to say, well, maybe I do. The sheer ineptitude of other teams, yeah. I think that they've made some good moves over the summer that I think give them a little bit more balance. I think that Remy Bensebaini, who was at Montpellier last year on loan, I think is a big upgrade at left back from Sheikh Mbenge. It allows Ludovic Ball to play further forward, and I think he's been really, really great this season. I think he was, easily the best player on a very poor Lens team a few years ago. And that, Gourcuff is trusting a little bit more in these veteran players. The sale of Steven Moreira to Lorient as well. It brings Romain Danze back into the side. Still only 30, but I think was a really integral player in Rennes' better teams going back 5, 6, 7 years ago when they were in the Europa League a couple times. There's still a good team, but I think the defense got found out by a really informed Monaco. But yeah, I think that Rennes should be where they were last season, 6th or 7th. If they can really get the attack going and Tep gets back to full fitness, the youngster Adama Diakabi has looked decent. He had a really nice goal, and there's and Camille Grosicki's coming back to fitness too. I'm trying to think about a team, Pedro Enrique. There's enough opportunity here, I think, for Rennes to be one of the better teams in Ligue 1. But I'd say probably 5th is their ceiling at this point in time.
Yeah, and I think Christian Gourcuff still needs to find the right spot for the returning Paul Georges and Tep and get him firing and going again, because he's still clearly one of the more talented players on this team. And looking at that Monaco team again, they played 4-4-2 at the weekend. They seem to be able to morph into any sort of team they want to be at any moment, and that's why they're top of the league. But let's talk about another team now that have succeeded at the start of this season. And despite a goalless draw against Dijon at the weekend, Metz have made a surprisingly strong start to the season. They sit in 4th, level on points with Paris Saint-Germain, and with 3 wins in the bag already. What do you put their excellent start down to, Eric?
I think that they're a team that's, been willing to. It's just properly motivated. I mean, I think that headlined by obviously by Mevlut Erding, they're a team that's got the right amount of veteran presence to players who want another chance in Liga. But there's also some exciting young players. I mean, the goalkeeper Thomas Didion has been great, but I'm thinking particularly the likes of, besides Erding, Frank Signorino and Jan Juf, who again is still struggling with injuries, but Renard Coad as well has been a great driving forward from midfield. He's I think someone who's been given a new lease on life after, to be fair, someone middling his time at Saint Etienne. So yeah, I think that there's a that set of veteran players is well motivated to keep themselves and keep a team in Liga. With Erding as well, I think that he's someone who's been on the fringes of the Turkey national team, and I think perhaps having a bright start to Liga or to life with Metz in Liga, I think is someone who could work his way back into that team, and I think that that's a motivation for him as well. He's always been sort of an inconsistent striker throughout his time in Liga, but yeah, there's just the right balance of veteran players who have lots of Liga experience, but also some of these younger, more exciting players as well, and headlined by Didion. I think that another website I write for, outside of the boot, we've spotlighted him quite a bit in the early going as being, one of, if not the best, keepers going, especially given his age. I think, was he 21, 22? No, he's 20. Jeez, yeah, he's not even 21 until later this year. And he's been fantastic to have that sort of pressure put on you to be a team that's going to be scrapping for relegation. I mean, let's face it, Mets have had a good start. I think best case scenario, they could be, like an Angers last season, maybe, doing well but tailing off and finishing mid-table. Whereas, to have that sort of pressure put on you at 20 years old, and to have the response he's had, I think is pretty fantastic. So I think that, yeah, Mets have just struck the right balance, and that's really what it is. They're not, they're not, how should I say, they're not overloading on one type of player or the other, and they're doing well.
And I agree with you. I've been really impressed by Thomas Didion in the goal. I think he's been superb for his age, and I think the success of Metz speaks to a lot of things when you're a promoted side in any league, and that's getting an established goal scorer who knows how to score in that division. And we all know Mevlut Erding is exactly the kind of player to do that. I know he's only scored in 2 games, and 2 were penalties, and he scored a hat-trick against Nantes, and he scored twice in that opening win against Lille. But having a player like that who will get you goals just adds to the confidence in your team, and he's essentially won them 2 games with those goals. I mean, there was an extra goal in that opening game that eventually won them the game, but his 2 set them up and got the ball rolling. His hat-trick against Nantes was really, really good and really clinical from him. And getting that kind of player in your team really gives you a little bit of a boost. But I've also been very impressed with Opine Get, who's come. We've seen him in Ligue 1 before with Valenciennes a few years ago, and he looked. I think it was when he was still about 18, 19, and he was interesting, and he had a little bit about him. He had a little bit of skill, a little bit of pace, but now he seems to have put a little bit of a package together. He looks stronger, certainly, than he did a few years ago. He looks to be able to hold the ball up much better. His decision-making is a little bit better. The way he set up the first goal against Nantes, just simply laying it off for Erding to finish superbly, just that little bit extra experience and confidence in himself seems to have pushed him onto that next level. And that's the kind of player you need in this, in these sort of sides, is a young player that gives you a bit of energy as well. I think Ismaili Sarr has been interesting as well whenever we've seen him play, adding those to the mix of the ones you've already mentioned of Renard Coad, Jan Jouffre as well in those midfield areas, really adds something to this team that just pushes them on to the next level. But you've mentioned already, Eric, that you think they're going to possibly tail off a little bit, but jumping on that because we don't want to push them too far. There's a game against Bordeaux midweek and Montpellier coming at the weekend, 2 relatively winnable games, you might argue. So do you think they have enough to stay up this season compared to what we have seen of Ligue 1 so far and with 5 games gone?
Sure, but also, I mean, that's with a big caveat. I mean, let's face it, Nathan. At the beginning of this season, Lorient have started poorly. Now they win. There's going to be, I think, you can honestly look at any one of about 10 teams that have potential to go down this season, and I think I would put Metz in that group. You got Milan Bisevac still to come back. Kevin Lejeune, the captain, is still yet to come back as well this season. So I think that there's continued potential for growth for Metz, but at the same time, I mean, they haven't exactly played, a murderer's row of fixtures to start. Nantes, Angers on that kind of form either. Let's see how these 2 matches go. I think to get better judgment on them. Honestly, to be fair, I think Montpellier is someone that we've been ready to slag off and ready to, not take full consideration of, but they've turned in a couple surprising performances in the past couple weeks. I think particularly yesterday against Nice, they were surprisingly resolute and created some good chances. Bordeaux, talk about hot and cold. Pretty disappointing against the defensive Angers side. But incandescent against Lyon last weekend. So who knows? If they get 4 points out of these 2 matches, I'd feel a lot more confident about where they are right now. But 10 points from 5 matches, great. I think that's a lovely start. I think that they are a club on the level, given their fan base, given their history, that should be in Ligue 1. So it's a good thing for the league to have clubs with this strong historical basis, if you will, to be in the league.
Yeah, and you've already mentioned it, and we're going into the Ligue 1 medley, looking at a few different fixtures now, and it is pretty much a crapshoot from Paris Saint-Germain down, really. A lot of teams have already picked up at least a victory, even all the way down to 20th now with Lorient. But we go to that fixture on Sunday night in the Olympico game between Marseille and Lyon. Eric, it finished 0-0, but it wasn't necessarily a dull affair, was it?
No, both teams had some good chances. I think Tolisso hit the bar. NG had a chance late on to put it away. There was a goal from Darder that Cornet was waved offside for. There was a clearance off the line as well from Lyon. So yeah, I think it was a fairly entertaining match. Lyon had, for the second match in a row, dating back to Wednesday's Champions League fixture against Dinamo Zagreb, trotted out this 3-5-2. Lucas Toussaint came in for the suspended Maxime Gonalon in central midfield and played really well. It did get booked, but showed a lot of energy, a lot of industry, but also, and this is what worries me a little bit about Lyon, being on, say, Monaco's level or PSG's level this season. That too often, and again, as wonderful and as energetic as a match as Toussaint had, too often he was the one that was forced to track back and forced to cover the mistakes of the 3 defenders. Morel had a decent match, but gosh, Nkulu and Yanga and Biwa, I'm still not convinced by. I think that Toussaint was too often forced to run back and cover their mistakes, and it made for what I felt was a little bit of a lack of continuity. Pardon me, from Lyon going forward. Going alone, playing in that role, is not as mobile as Toussaint, but also has that ability to, with these long passes, to break up play and to start the counterattack, to set likes of Ferry and Darder and Tolisso in this example going forward. And Toussaint's someone who's still developing in that role, but if Lyon have to persist with this 3-5 or 3-5-1-1 for any length of time, I do worry about the efficacy of that central midfielder as being, a starting point for the attack. And that to me is a little bit worrying. I think that defense needs to get sorted out. That should be, again, back up to Lacazette is needed. Yeah. But I think you could still get by with Cornet and Kalulu up there, particularly once Fekir comes back to health. But I think, finding another central defender is going to have to be prioritized for Lyon at this point in time. They will gain some confidence from the clean sheet, but, the players need to know, even if it says 0 next to the opponent's name, how much of that was down to good play from Lyon, and how much of that was down to mistakes from Marseille. So Marseille, on the other hand, look like they're getting a little bit more going forward. I think the Bouna Sarr, now that he's been given more of a chance, continues to impress. I thought he was always, a decent player and wasn't given perhaps as much of a chance as he should have last season by Michel. He's been given more opportunities under Franck Passy, and I think it has shown pretty well, both against Nice last weekend and yesterday evening against Lyon. I think he shows, a willingness to tackle back and a willingness to spread play and be an orthodox winger. Whereas last season, Nkudu in that role had liked to cut inside. I think he provides the team with a little bit more natural width. He's not the most cultured crosser of the ball, but I think that he also has a good ability to link play. So there's a little bit of a saving grace there. So I think, probably a more encouraging result from Marseille, given that they're still trying to get their feet wet. I think that Hiroki Sakai had, for the first time that I've seen him, and I think this is the 5th or 6th time I've seen Marseille play this season, including friendlies, I think actually had a decent match. So that's to be encouraged as well. Maybe again, he looked poor to start the season, but he's a Japanese international. Japan's one of the best teams in the Asian Football Confederation. He's not, at the level he is in the Bundesliga in the Japanese national team because he's a poor player. So he seems to be getting a little more comfortable. Doria and Hubachan, again, seem to be growing in confidence. Henri Berimo, I think, can be an important player going forward from left back. So, Marseille, again, are not going to challenge for Europe, but I think that there are enough seeds of change there, if you will, to give this team and to give their fans a little bit more confidence going forward.
Yeah, if you don't succeed, try again in the terms of Sakai, it seems to be at the moment. But I agree with you with Marseille. It looks like they finally have options. I mean, they didn't bring too many in at the end of the season, but they're trusting some of the younger players to start from the start, like Zambo Anguissa, who's played the entire game. Leia Seika played quite a long period of the game as well. But bringing on the likes of being able to bring on Mashash and G and Cabela into a game, although I would still argue maybe Cabela should start, but I know he's coming back from a knock or so. But they finally look like they might be able to put something together where they're not scrambling for results and hoping for the best. And I agree that I thought they had some decent moments, and I think that I like Thomas Hubachan. I didn't think a player of his age and he played predominantly his career in Russia, and I thought he was half decent when I've seen him in Champions League fixtures. Obviously, I'm not. It's a bit difficult to watch Russian football from the UK as far as I know, but he's really played quite well in that central area. Although he did play left back even for Slovakia in the game against England, so it shows his versatility should Marseille need it as well, which is a great plus for a team that's not incredibly in depth. But I also liked that Lyon went with that formation. I know obviously it's probably it's a needs must kind of situation with the amount of injuries they've had, but it worked against Dinamo, so why couldn't it work again? And it wasn't at times it looked like it was coming together, and it just couldn't quite pull off at times. But I do want to mention one last thing on Lyon, and you might know what's coming, Eric, in the fact that they were in discussions and then out of discussions to sign Adebayor, the free agent. Would that have been a right move for them?
No. They got young Jean-Philippe Mateta instead, and I think Mateta is a fantastic player. I watched him in the Coupe de la Ligue a few weeks ago, and he scored a hat trick. Looks fantastic. He's big. He's 6'2", 6'3", but great movement, 2-footed. I think that if you need an extra attacker late in the game, he could really complement Lacazette well, because he does have, even though he can function as a target man, he also has the versatility and the foot speed to play alongside Lacazette in a more fluid system, playing the ball on the ground as well. Or if Lyon had fixture congestion and Lacazette, we've seen generally tends to miss some time each season. I think he's a suitable option as well to start. Should Lyon feel the need to mitigate their fixture congestion.
Yeah, and the excuses that Adebayo has brought up of the fact that they obviously will go to the African Cup of Nations with Togo are, whilst valid, do seem a little bit out of the blue when they must have known that that might have been an issue. But I would also try and come up with an excuse to not sign Emmanuel Adebayo if I could, because he's not. He's probably had about one season where he's actually been super impressive to me. So probably a bullet dodged there. But going back to some Ligue 1 games, and Toulouse picked up a nice solid win against Guingamp, although it took a red card for Karl-Johan Jonsson, the goalkeeper for Guingamp, and they went behind in this game, Eric, but fought back pretty bravely, and this is another really good result for them at home.
Yeah, I think that I really like the arrival of Jimmy Durmaz. I mean, this is a Swedish international, someone who'd fallen out of favor at Olympiacos, but I think really adds that creative spark that they've been missing playing on the right wing. The goal, that was maybe poor defending on Gangamp's part, but he's got good movement. He's got a great eye for a pass, and I think that Braithwaite and Odsonne Edouard, the PSG loaning, will certainly be glad to have service of his quality there. I think Toulouse are in 5th place now at the time being, and they've certainly sixth. Okay, they've certainly exceeded expectations to start this season. Only one loss, only 4 goals conceded in 5 matches. They are now, I believe, the joint best defense in Ligue 1, and that's a pretty impressive start. Martin Braithwaite seems to be really taking the bull by the horns. His contract's just been extended, and I think that's a real boon for the club as well. So yeah, are Toulouse going to be a European contender? Probably not. Are they going to have to worry about relegation? I also think probably not. I think that they're going to be, solidly mid-table. We're a club of their history, of their means, of their recent experience should be.
And yes, you were right. They're joint top with Monaco, Nice, and Paris Saint-Germain as the best defences in Ligue 1. And it's a great result against a Guingamp side that's been pretty decent so far this season. I mean, we've been impressed by Marcus Coco, but he had to come off early, which is a shame. But they're bringing on a player like Ludovic Blas, who is expected big things, and he didn't quite make it in this match, but we might see more. And when you're down to 10 men anyway, it does change. I mean, they brought off Thibaut Gores for the goalkeeper to be able to come on, which takes a little bit away from your attacking play. And from then on, it seemed almost inevitable that Toulouse would pile on the pressure, and eventually they broke them down, and probably deservedly so in the end. But another interesting game of the weekend, and that was Nice's draw on Montpellier. And you've already touched on it, Eric, about the success that Montpellier had in this game. So was it more of a team performance this time? It wasn't what we expect of the Riyad Boudibou show, or was he again dictating just how good this team can be?
I mean, to a large extent, yes, penalty was. I mean, yes, it's a penalty, but gosh, for the handball on Sarr, you really have to feel for the young center back. Yeah, I think that this is probably a Nice side that's, getting to be a bit exhausted, given the amount of fixtures they've had to play in with the match against Schalke. They worked their socks off. The likes of Dalbert, Dante, Bice, are going to be a little bit tired at this point. But I think that there was good movement. I think that in the likes of Sanson and Yakuba Silla, you've got good dynamism from midfield, and Shaqiri had a good shot as well. I think that as those quote unquote defensive midfielders, and again, Saint-Saëns been played on the right a little bit this season, which I don't think is a natural fit for him. I think he should be moved into the center to some regard, maybe playing in a 4-3-1-2 to give Boudibou a free role. But that being said, I think there's there's enough sparks at Montpellier to make me not as worried about them as I had been, say 3 weeks ago, prior to the international break. The central midfielders, as they gain more confidence, are going to be able to link play to Budabu's better, and Steve Mooney, they've got a really nice young striker. Suleiman Kamara, is still dependable off the bench. He was perhaps a little bit unlucky not to have scored, almost forced the ball over the line in the game's dying moments. And yeah, I think that it's certainly again, I want to say an encouraging result because it was a little bit lucky, but Montpellier continuing to build in that regard.
Yeah, and especially after what was a middling little start, but again, Nice, you mentioned already, they did look a little bit tired, and they did make a couple of changes. I mean, Vincent Congiello didn't even play after what must have been a really tough game against Schalke, because they really gritted down and tried their best. And William Cyprien didn't go from the start. They started with Suke and Belander and Lusamba and Walter in that midfield area, so we didn't see any of Jean-Michel Seri. So you could see that they needed a difference, and it's a lucky result in the end for them as well, because obviously the Belander goal near the end just sort of squeezed them past when it looked like they were going to go 1-0 away with nothing. But in the end, they'll probably take that as a solid result, how the season's gone so far, and they're still, after a really good start and a good couple of wins, they're still unbeaten, still in those second place at the moment. So they'll be at least happy with their outlayings. But another game you saw this weekend, Eric, and another team that played in Europe midweek was Saint-Etienne, and they got another 1-0 win against Bastia. It almost seems like that's the common theme with Saint-Lever at the moment, to grab a goal and then sit it out. Was it a tough game again for them? Did they look a little bit leggy from their Thursday fixture?
No, I don't think they looked leggy. They had a decent amount of rotation. Leo Lacroix came in, Vincent Pajot, Tanan. But what's frustrating to me is that Saint-Etienne, I think, maybe got this transfer window a little bit wrong. Now that I'm seeing the team in practice, I like the acquisition of Dabo. I like the acquisition of Veretout and Saive, two players that had moves to the Premier League, didn't work out. But this team's still lacking a genuine creative threat besides Romain Amouma. And I love Amouma. He's capable of some wonderful moments. He's probably man of the match yesterday. Aside from Leka's penalty save, probably had the biggest effect on the match. But it's frustrating to me that a player who is inconsistent as Amouma can be is still, despite all this interesting transfer movement, probably the best creative player that they have. I mean, great to bring in these three midfielders in Veretout, Saive, and Dabo that they did over the season, but are they the creative answer to Saint-Etienne's problems? No, because they don't have that ability on the ball, that ability to link play, to get the ball in via crosses, that versatility in terms of ways that can be attacked, and you're forced to bring Amouma off the bench. Now, okay, with fixture congestion, is playing half an hour really going to wear these players down? Well, maybe not so much, but maybe if you got some of these trips that Saint-Etienne have to go on in the Europa League, that could be a middling thing. Maybe you prefer to leave Amouma home on one or more of these trips. It's just not coming off the way I'd hoped for this team in terms of being able to have that depth in terms of creativity. Tanan had a great start after having arrived last winter, but hasn't been anywhere near that player this season. And I think that Galtier was probably counting on him to be that player, and it's not materialized in that way, and it's been a little frustrating. So I think that if Saint-Etienne are going to be active in the winter window, they should look for another creative player, someone who can stretch play and draw defenders out, but also be able to turn inside and shoot, and as Amouma can.
Yeah, and it is a good result for them regardless, and then getting those 1-0 wins. Classic.
Certainly, I mean, Bastia are always a tough opponent.
Although they can be a little bit seasick away from home. But we'll finish this week with a little rant from myself, and that's Lorient finally getting off the mark against a frankly frustrating and disappointing Lyon side who've been that all season, and they currently sit in 17th, which might surprise a few people, on 4 points. They have 5 goals and 9 conceded, and while that total for goals isn't the worst in League One, they're just something about this team that's not quite working. I mean, we know how bad Lorient have been so far this season, and they were better at the weekend, but they weren't much better. And Lille failed to register a shot on target against a team that had conceded 10 goals, which is more than anyone else in Ligue 1 before. Caen lost 6-0 at the weekend, and it would still be the most if they didn't lose by that kind of margin. How they couldn't find an opening against a team like that, I will never know. And just some of the decisions from we questioned Antonetti earlier this season, and in the Europa League, and they lost to Kabbalah, and I just don't get him. I just don't get what the team's trying to do. You look at the starting lineup; they've got Morgan Amalfitano, Ronnie Lopez, and Eder as their sort of what I assume must be their front three, and then he brings off Eder for Nicolas de Préville, which, if you saw Nicolas de Préville last season, he never played up front, really. He was more of a creative sense, of putting him in that role doesn't make any sense. Having Ryan Mendes come on, who could barely get a game for a championship side in England and still can't do anything in France either, didn't make much sense either. And they're really lacking for anything. And I just don't know where this team's going. And if there's anyone on the hot seat now in Liga, it has to be Antonetti. And I don't know if you agree with me, Eric, but surely he should be looking over his shoulder in the next couple of weeks if results don't start picking up for a side that should be pushing further up the table again.
Well, I mean, I have to agree with you, and this is why I was so baffled as to why that contract was signed through 2020 last season. And yeah, there's definitely a lack of coherence, a lack of how to get the best out of these players. I mean, look, starting Frank Barry over Julien Palmieri. Palmieri was, probably one of the best 5 left backs in the league last year at Bastia, and that's at Bastia, a team that don't exactly have a lot of flair going forward. He scores a worldie against Monaco and now doesn't start. Is he being saved for the midweek match against Toulouse? Okay, maybe, but still, I wholeheartedly agree with you, Nathan. I think that given the quality of player, Ronnie Lopez is another one. Lille have to be doing better than this. They have to be.
Yeah, and it's a big week really coming up for them. We mentioned they go to Toulouse, and then they host Toulouse, and they have Saint-Etienne at the weekend as well. Tough games, not easy chances with teams that are in a bit of form, and he might. You never really know with Lille. He might be getting maybe a little bit warm under that seat, but that's all we have for this week. My thanks to Eric for joining me, and to everyone listening at home this evening. Remember to tune into our preview show that may have some highlights of those midweek fixtures on Thursday, hosted by Eric himself. And we will see you again at the same time, same place next week. A bientôt and farewell.